Okay, so how do we know each other?
So we're working in the same industry. So we kind of passed each other by while I was in Joburg, you being in Cape Town. And so about 7 years we moved down to Cape Town. For some of the companies that I've been working for over the last 7 years, we've engaged. So either at a pre-sale stage, a couple of projects. For the last little while, especially with the company I'm working at the moment, we've been involved quite heavily on some projects. So I landed up in CRM primarily by accident, and I didn't quite realize going to use CRM as a platform or as a container, what that meant. So I took the opportunity, and that was in CRM 4 days. And so what ended up happening is there was a collection of developers having to use a platform, and we effectively custom dev'd almost everything, failing to understand the benefits or the bigger picture of what the platform could give us. And so that was my introduction to CRM. And for probably about 2 or 3 years, I honestly was kicking and screaming as a developer, going, it's too limiting, it's too constrained, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's promoted into leadership role where then you start looking after customers. You're responsible for the delivery of their projects. And I struggled for the first few months to get my head around this because I was used to coding. And something clicked for me during that period was the understanding the value proposition of the platform and understanding that technology or platforms in general, anything IT related, is there to serve a purpose to business, to realize business value, to solve a business problem. And that there wasn't a high interest from anyone paying the bills about how pretty the code looked. And where I got a lot of pushback is I never believed it was a silver bullet. So I always believed that CRM plays an important role in an organization, but you shouldn't try and push every conceivable thing into it. Through my journey of the last probably 7 years down in Cape Town, and the customers that I've engaged with, seems to be this consistent pattern where it's quite easy to position that it's the right solution at, let's say, a conceptual level. When you start getting almost the next level to understand that it's this layer above your line of business applications, and then there's various levels or maturities of integration that will happen between your line of business applications and CRM. There's this resistance to buy into it almost, because they want the Swiss Army knife. They want the new shiny Ferrari. They don't want something just sitting above the line of business applications. When you look at the financials, it's a bitter pill to swallow to say, put this new capability down initially, and you'll start seeing the benefits over time. You're not necessarily going to see the benefits right up front. And that is it becomes quite a challenge to sell, and you only get to that really when you start unpacking more details. And so when you're at the conceptual level, it's little blocks and it looks quite simple, and you try and figure out why no one's doing this. But when you start unpacking the actual details, and you start realizing how many policy admin systems there are, how many integration mechanisms there are, how many telephony systems they've got, what they currently use as almost an interface for their agents in the contact center, that's where the challenges start coming thick and fast, and there's an expectation you've already solved them at the conceptual level.
We're here at the school. What's that about?
So we had One Life. One Life is the social justice arm for Urban Edge. Urban Edge is the church that I'm a member at. And so they've been in the Vasanskral community for about 10 years. And they primarily offer a literacy center for preschool, a reading center, and then education center for the high school kids. And through the church, we have the opportunities to either volunteer or make financial contributions monthly to basically sponsor kids. It gives a child the opportunity to come here on a day-to-day basis and get a good quality education and be fed. The next step for us was to get involved. I believe in hands, not rands. So So sometimes, although money is important, sometimes money is the almost a hands-off approach where you can give some money. Don't necessarily have to get actively involved. And something that's close to my heart and part of my belief system is upliftment and blessed to be a blessing, helping others, especially others that are less fortunate than us. And also I want to contribute into somewhere that is within my community. That's why I started looking around to see how I could get involved. So the other option was to get involved in the education centre, which is the homework centre, which is the older kids. So the kids that come from the high school, so it's grade 8s to 12s. And what happens there is it's a voluntary program for the kids, but it gives them a safe space to do their homework. How I participate in that is on a Thursday for 2 hours, you come and you help facilitate the session. And so for the first few weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, I was struggling with how I was adding value, what was my contribution. So over some time, there was almost a natural progression helping on the IT side. And so there's 8 PCs here where the kids get access to the internet and they get access to certain applications to improve their reading and literacy. Because they figured out how I make a living, then it became my almost pet project. So whenever they had issues with the PCs, next step of that was Rian and I. So Rian is the manager of the high school program. And we discussed facilitating a IT workshop, which would be over a 2-week period and would cover the basics of IT. Over the course of the next 2 or 3 months, we put together a framework and then I had to fill in the blanks. And 3 weeks ago, we ran 2 one-hour sessions and then the week after 2 one-hour sessions, where we took the kids through firstly a theoretical piece, which is what is a mouse, what is a taskbar, what is a start bar, and then moving towards how to use the browser, which would help them with their research, and then what the basics of Microsoft Word, so that they can transfer that research that they've found into a document which they need to then submit it at school. Yeah, so that was quite a challenge for me, not being a public speaker. But it was pretty well received and fulfilling when I started seeing that some of the things that they've been taught, they started applying on a day-to-day basis, but I would see it when I was here on a Thursday afternoon. So that was very, very fulfilling. And also something that we can evolve and grow over time, introducing other things like Excel. But yes, I think through the consistent attendance from my side, there's a rapport now and there's a bit of a relationship there, and understanding of the value that I can potentially bring. It's also exposing them to things that they've not necessarily been exposed to before. So maybe a little practical example was to start showing kids places in South Africa on Google Maps. They were busy researching something for, I think it was Orange River. But we used that opportunity to start showing other things within Google Maps, starting to use Street View and seeing different things. It's a satisfying thing to be able to expose them to different things. Let's utilize the skills, resources that we have to uplift people, to give them opportunities. Because a handout is only going to last so long. If you can uplift someone, give them an opportunity or give them a hand up in some sort of way, they can start helping themselves. I believe that everyone wants to help themselves. I don't think it's inherently in people to want to get handouts. I think sometimes it's maybe their last resort. One of the things that I've been positioning around D365 is the utilization of Unified Service Desk as a single interface for contact center agents, and then leveraging the telephony adapters from USD to integrate into Avaya or Presence, whichever one. But then starting quite light, so getting it in the face of an agent, almost in a prototyping type manner, and start leveraging the CRM capabilities, customer relationship management capabilities of D365, and starting with either a lead or a customer
and working it from there, and leverage the capability of USD to start navigating the journey of an agent or a manager within a contact center across the different line of business applications. Initially, it means that you don't necessarily have to have a almost deep integration. You can start out with quite light integration by using Unified Service Desk's user interface integration, which effectively is manipulating elements on the page to navigate you to different places. At a very high level, what you could start doing is you could have your legacy line of business applications surfaced inside Unified Service Desk, plus your new shiny Ferraris. And then slowly but surely, as you start building up confidence and you get feedback from the agents about what's working and what's not working, you can start evolving the new and slowly decommissioning the old. And then start understanding what integration you want to invest in and what you don't want to invest in. There's a lot of debates about what the best way is and how long is it going to take, and there's many resource constraints. And so to minimize that risk, you can then start doing this almost screen mashup between the different applications first. See what works, and then what works, then you can decide, is that good enough? And if it is good enough, just use it. If you need a more ingrained integration, then by all means then go through a service bus and actually integrate theoretically properly, but then at least you can start getting those learnings. And if you look at it from a contact center agent's perspective, they've got a high turnover of staff, and they're measured on things like average handling time, and they often have to do a lot of work in a very short space of time. And what often happens is they're using Notepad as their tool actually. So ID number, for instance, they will have to capture it in multiple applications. So they use Notepad as a place where they can go and copy and paste it into the different applications. Yeah, so if you can get a Unified Service Desk workbench in front of the contact center agents, you can start by obviously integrating with your telephony, so the call is popping and you're utilizing your existing telephony asset. And you pop in either a lead or a contact, navigating a journey. You can start training that journey. So if it's this type of service request, or this type of request on a service side or a sales side, you can start using the call script navigator on the left hand side for Unified Service Desk to start entering the agent into the correct line of business application, or initiating it in CRM, and then from there going to the right place in the right application. So obviously each application is going to have different levels of maturity. So you might have a shiny new web app, or you might have a green screen, or you might have a couple of other legacy systems. There's opportunity that you can create them all as tabs within Unified Service Desk. Have a customer with these list of policies, understanding which policy type it is. So is it a funeral, is it a life cover, is it an investment? And then knowing when you select that, which tab to go to, or which application to go to. And then the maturity depends primarily on that application. But at least what you're doing then is you're driving a unified experience across all agents, no matter how long or how short they've been there. And the theory is then you can start reducing that training time, which means that when they're on the floor, they become productive a whole lot quicker. And I believe it makes their lives a little bit easier. I think there's nothing worse than that maybe it's your second or third call and now you're trying to navigate these systems and you don't know where to go. So I think it does foster a unified journey within the companies, and it solves problems like you don't have to implement the whole thing at once. You create a ring-fence team and you just put USD down there with CRM. You resolve the challenge around who owns the customer, which data is residing in CRM, how much of the data in the policy admin systems do you actually want to reside in CRM, and how often do you want that to be updated. Those are the challenges you spend your time solving. And then over time, when you start seeing the benefit, then you start understanding which of the policy admin systems you want to decommission, because that's fundamentally not a CRM issue. It's actually, do you want to consolidate policy admin systems? Are there different data structures? Is the products different? And I find often that's one of the things not spoken about is you've got varying versions of products, so versions of policies. And to migrate those and merge those is quite a big challenge. And that sometimes hinders technology projects. So I think a while ago there was this view that an agent needed one UI. So he needed one place to go do everything. And potentially that was before something like unified service desk or even the concept of a workbench was being discussed. And so one of the things that's a challenge is making effectively what's a customer relationship management tool try and be a policy administration system. So you're creating that Swiss Army knife. You're trying to create something that it's not. You're starting to duplicate data, but not just peripheral data. It's core data to billing, to installing policies. And you have multiple failure points. So when you start creating an application at the front end and the back end is so reliant on information at the front end to perform or to do its day-to-day tasks, the middleware layer has to be so robust, and you need to have lots of checks and balances in the middleware layer to make sure that there are no issues. And so I just think you almost overcapitalize on one area of your architecture. So you've got, let's say, 8 or 10 pieces of tech in your architecture, but you're overcapitalizing on just one piece. I've worked on both the implementation side and on the customer side. The biggest challenge you have is to get buy-in and to challenge the business that is paying you that what they're doing is wrong. And they don't like it. So often, I often believe that vendors get a raw deal because it's easy to blame the vendors. When you're pointing out some challenges that need to be resolved and they don't want to resolve them, and then going a year down the line, the vendor gets the blame, and the vendor has to put so many things in place to play back to the customer. Listen, these are the things that we've required, they're not there, X, Y, Z. So that's the challenges on the vendor side. The thing I like though is I like implementing stuff. So I like the challenge of change. I'm driven by making things better, solving problems. And so when you look on the customer side, it's a lot longer journey. It's a patience game. Things don't happen quickly, and that's what I've had to learn. And on the vendor side, you don't really see that because you typically on 3 projects, 2 projects, and you're going from project 1 on a Monday and a Thursday, project 2 on a Tuesday and a Friday. You're juggling these multiple projects, and you're just changing all the time and adapting all the time. You're going to sit in the server room here, but you've got a different office there, and here there's nice coffee, there's no coffee. So you're having to adapt to change all the time. And so when you come into the customer side, there's a lot of buy-in you need outside of the official processes to get things across the line. And I've often found that when I think it's across the line, it's not across the line until either the licenses have been bought, or the environment is set up, or that the people from the vendor are sitting next to me. There's many more factors that can impact a change initiative. And obviously the bigger the company, the more factors are at play. You get to see the result of change. And you actually see that the decision you made 18 months ago to do X, Y, and Z and fought so hard for, it's reaping benefits. And people are very slow to realize that. I mean, they don't necessarily come to you and say, well, thank you, it's all perfect and it's helping us and stuff. Generally, people always see challenges in what they're doing. But you look for the signs of specifically around the key indicators of average handling time and like visibility of tracking work and having one customer across all applications that you trust, trusting the data, trusting the process. You look for those kind of things, and then there's also a continuous improvement that you drive through on the customer side.
Probably about beginning of 2018, started pulling at the heartstrings a lot. And so I started to try and understand how I could fit volunteering in with a busy work life. And so I pitched it to my boss at work, and I was fortunate enough to be given the go-ahead to start it. So I leave the office at 2 and everyone's wondering where I go. And it started out like, where are you going? There's work to do. And slowly but surely there's been a curiosity about, I also want to do something. I also want to give back. I also want to utilize my skills to uplift a community or a person. They're starting just to ask, how did I go about it? How did I position it with my company? How did I find a place where I could potentially help? And yes, I mean, the main feedback I'm giving them is you have to take the first step and then beware what you wish for, because these things it becomes fulfilling, but yeah, you get caught up in it. It's part of our jobs. It's what we get paid to do, is to save money, make things more efficient, ensure that we're profitable. But I strongly believe that that's not all. That there's a level of fulfillment that I require in order to live my day-to-day life. I find fulfillment out of uplifting people, out of improving people's lives. And that might be through small things, it might be through big things. It might be through encouraging words, or it might be through upliftment of a spirit, like just giving people a sense of hope. And I enjoy doing that. So this is an extension of something that I feel is relatively part of me, is ensuring that we uplift.
So from a business case perspective, what I've learned, I spent a lot of time, predominantly over the last 3 years, involved in pitching in business cases and pros and cons and benefits and where does it fit in. And a lot of companies actually have a lot of tools. So you first need to go and understand, is there not a tool that already exists that can do what you wanting it to do? And if not, then you go outside and you go, okay, I don't have this tool in my toolbox, let's go find something else. And then you position that. So bigger the company, bigger the tool set, it's nice because you've got a bigger range to pick from. And typically if it's in there already, then you don't have to go through another layer of POC and architecture reviews and stuff like that. If it's already an approved platform, then there's at least one gate checked. But the business case is very much taking the technology hat off, putting a business hat on. Financials, benefits, risks, drawbacks, positioning. So not big fancy pictures, but a simple picture. So I purposely make it now, after learning, picture quite simplistic, purposefully, so that firstly you understand, and then secondly I can get the feedback, and I use the feedback as a mechanism of understanding as well. So where's this? Why is this not there? You've missed this, that kind of stuff. You use that as a gauge to make sure they've looked at it and that they've understood it. And that becomes a key component for me of discussion in a business case. So that becomes your base, and then you start speaking to your current pain points. Why are we doing this? You don't want to just do it for the sake of doing it. Is there a tangible business problem or opportunity? And then I find be realistic. So I always say, if it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. So as much as it's probably a longer cycle to get something approved, be realistic and honest in your assessments and in the business case, because you can overpromise, and that puts you under pressure from day one. So if you overpromise, then you've got vendors who are obviously protecting their own interests as well, and now you're trying to put pressure on them. You relaying the pressure onto them, and it's 8 hours in a day, there's a budget, there's timelines, we've agreed certain things. Now from the get-go, you're putting pressure on. So coming from the vendor side, I had this perception that it's just This happens. You write the document, someone signs it, and off you go. But I did learn that initial discussions and signing a business case is a journey. And it's a journey with many participants that have different interests. And these interests come from all angles. And so you need to make sure that there's strong positioning. And often have the courage to get feedback, to get mud thrown at it. Because if the mud doesn't stick, then at least you know that it's going to hold up over time, and that potentially it's the right way to go. So if there's too many questions asked, if there's too many holes, then potentially you need to just go and relook at what you're trying to do and understand that there's governance and you cannot get away from it. You need to make sure that you've got all your ducks in a row, and that you can answer the questions coming from financial people, actuaries, technology people, business people, and depending on the extent of the change, it's going to go higher and higher up in terms of the chain of command in a corporate, and you need to speak to each one of those levels. And so what I've started doing now as well is making sure that I've got lots of detail and very little detail, but all supported by the same picture. And so I just use that picture as my base, and then I color it in a lot for people that want lots of details, and I color it in a little bit for the people that want no details. And then tick the financial boxes, both on a capital side, so how much capital am I going to pay, when am I going to pay it, and how much is it going to cost me when this thing's done. Because often, and that's what you don't see on the vendor side, is it has to run, and it often is going to run for some time. And especially when you go to the cloud, it's going to run for a longer time, because you're not going to just decommission it. So those things are very important, and they get asked actually a lot around operational costs. Have you missed anything? What about this? What about that? And because although cloud is not new, the way that you finance operational projects in terms of subscription-based licensing there's a learning process there for quite a few people, because they're asking questions like, where's the hardware costs, where's the software costs, what about this, what about that? And it's just an education thing to explain around that the licensing is taking care of the other components like hardware and software, so that protects the customer from having to worry about those things and move more towards like storage, for instance, or bandwidth or latency. Those become your bigger topics to discuss and to resolve when you're going to cloud.